It was just another Tuesday morning at Maple Ridge Middle School. The sky was a little too blue, the breeze a little too crisp, and the eighth graders were a little too restless. The gym echoed with the sounds of sneakers squeaking, the sharp blast of a whistle, and the groans of teens trying to wake up their bodies during second period. PE coach Brent, the new gym teacher, stood in the center of the court. He was tall, confident, and always smiling. Just the kind of man who made parents trust and kids obey. He'd been at the school for less than 3 weeks, but had already made a strong impression. Charisma like that was hard to miss. No one questioned where he came from. No one cared much about his resume. All that mattered was that he got kids moving and didn't cause trouble. Until he did. Standing by the gym doors was Officer Megan Carlin, the school's student safety liaison, with her partner, Lex, a calm, intelligent K-9 who had been with the school for months as part of a district-wide safety outreach program. Lex wasn't just a dog, he was a sentinel. Half Belgian Malinois, half mystery and all instinct. He'd been trained to detect drugs, weapons, and threats invisible to the naked eye. He'd never made a mistake. So when Lex suddenly stiffened, ears pinned forward and eyes locked onto Coach Brent, Officer Carlin immediately tensed. Without warning, Lex lunged. Across the gym floor, fast, purposeful, dead silent until he struck. His jaws clamped down on Brent's jacket sleeve, jerking the coach backward in front of dozens of stunned students. Gasps filled the room. Some screamed, some just froze. "Lex!" "Off!" Megan shouted. The dog released, teeth bared in a low, rumbling growl. Not panic, not confusion, but warning. Coach Brent's face went pale. "What the hell is wrong with that dog?" He snapped, eyes wild, voice trembling, though he tried to hide it behind a show of control. "Is he even trained?" Megan's response was cold, sharp. "He's extremely trained." The torn sleeve revealed no skin punctures, but the damage had been done. Not to the coach, no, but to the illusion that everything was fine. Principal Hargrove came running in. The situation was handled, of course. There would be an incident report, a meeting with the school board, and a polite note sent home to parents. Officially, it was written off as a rare training lapse, but one student didn't believe that. Not for a second. Her name was Emily Tran, 8th grade. Quiet, observant, the kind of student teachers called the calm in the storm. She'd spent hours with Lex after school. She knew him better than most adults on campus. Lex didn't bite without reason, and as she watched him stare down Coach Brent, tail low, eyes locked in silent fury, Emily knew something was terribly wrong, and the dog was the only one brave enough to say it. Chapter 1. Whispers and Warnings. By the time the bell rang the next morning, the story had already spread like wildfire. In every hallway, from the cafeteria to the art room, students whispered variations of the same line. "Did you hear? The dog bit Coach Brent." No way. It wasn't a real bite, just a sleeve. But Lex never does that. For most students, it was just gossip, an anomaly, a weird story to tell between classes, but not for Emily Tran. She couldn't stop replaying the scene in her mind. The way Lex's body locked up, the precision of his lunge, the guttural growl that didn't sound like aggression, but like warning. Lex wasn't panicked. He wasn't confused. He was sure, and Emily trusted him. That afternoon, she found Officer Carlin sitting near the garden, Lex lying at her feet like a statue. Emily hesitated before sitting down next to them. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. Carlin looked up, brushing crumbs off her lap. "Of course. Do you believe him?" "Who?" "Coach Brent." There was a long pause. Megan studied Emily carefully, then glanced down at Lex. "No," she said finally. "I don't, but I don't have evidence, and around here, suspicion without proof. That's just noise. The school doesn't want headlines. They want this to disappear." Emily nodded. She'd figured as much, but that didn't mean she could let it go. Lex didn't flinch at loud noises. He didn't spook. He didn't attack. Without reason. The next few days passed slowly. Lex was barred from the gym until further notice. Coach Brent went back to class like nothing had happened, his easy smile back in place. But he never made eye contact with Officer Carlin again, and when Lex passed the gym doors during patrol, he would growl. Every time, Emily noticed everything. She started staying later after school. She joined the cleanup crew after the charity bake sale. She hung back during club meetings. She didn't know what she was looking for, just that she had to keep looking. And then she saw it. It was Friday afternoon. The sun was low. Most students had gone home. Emily was walking down the hallway with a bag of recycling when she passed the locker room. The lights were off inside, but Coach Brent was there. Alone. He didn't see her at first. He was crouched. Near a bench, a thick file open on the floor. Not gym plans, not student rosters. It looked like a binder full of forms. Photos? Files. As soon as he saw movement, he snapped it shut and shoved it into his duffel bag. Need something? He asked sharply. Emily froze. No, sorry. I was just heading to the music room. His eyes scanned her for a beat too long. Then, like flipping a switch, his smile returned. All right, be safe, okay? She nodded, forcing herself to walk away. Calm, steady, normal. But her stomach churned. She waited behind the corner. 5 minutes later, he walked out, now with the duffel slung over his shoulder. He didn't see her, but Lex would have. Lex would have known. That night, she found Officer Carlin behind the police station. I think he's hiding something, she said, breathless. Carlin didn't dismiss her. She didn't even ask, are you sure? She just nodded. They reviewed the school's hallway cameras. Sure enough, there was Brent entering the locker room at 5:47 p.m. and exiting at 6:09, carrying a different bag than the one he brought. Don't was that suspicious, Megan said, but not enough for a warrant. Emily frowned. Then how do we prove it? Megan turned to her with a glimmer of something behind her eyes. Lex bit his sleeve, right? Emily nodded. Then we have a sample. What kind of sample? Carlin opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed plastic bag. Inside was the torn piece of Coach Brent's gray jacket, the same sleeve Lex had latched onto. There's blood. Or maybe skin. Either way, DNA. Emily's eyes widened. Are we allowed to do that? Carlin's jaw clenched. When it's about school safety, we're allowed to act. I'll file it under the emergency clause. Lex sat quietly nearby, tail still, eyes watchful. He wasn't celebrating. He never did. But he was alert, waiting, like he knew this was only the beginning. By Monday morning, things were shifting. Coach Brent arrived early. Too early. Emily saw him pacing inside the gym through the window as she passed on the way to science. He wasn't preparing. He was agitated, his shoulders stiff, his movements restless. Lex passed the gym door at 8:12 a.m. and stopped. His body stiffened, his nose lifted slightly. Growl, low, controlled, familiar. Emily had seen that look before. When Lex caught the scent of vape cartridges last fall, when he sensed that intoxicated man in the parking lot last winter, Lex wasn't reacting to fear. He was tracking something. That night, Megan called Emily. The test results came in, she said. Emily sat up straight in bed. And? Coach Brent isn't Coach Brent. His real name is Peter Callahan. The name hit like ice water. In 2016, he was charged with multiple counts of child exploitation and sexual misconduct in Idaho. Carlin continued. He made bail, disappeared, never caught. Emily's throat tightened. He's been hiding. Here, Megan said, under a new name, a new identity, and teaching in a middle school. Emily couldn't speak. Lex had known. From day one. We're moving carefully, Megan said. We're coordinating with the district attorney and child services, but we can't act until we're sure he doesn't run. Is he dangerous? Emily asked, her voice small. I don't know, Carlin admitted. But Lex thinks so. The next morning, Emily arrived at school early, heart racing. Every glance from Brent made her skin crawl. Every closed door made her jump. She avoided the gym entirely. At 11:23 a.m., he didn't show up for class. Security found the equipment closet. Dorayar, his gym jacket was inside. So was a burner phone, a half-packed bag, and an altered license plate. He was trying to run. Lex caught the scent immediately. He led Megan and 2 officers through the school gates and into the greenbelt forest beyond, the track field. Emily watched from the second-story window. 10 minutes later, they found him crouched behind a utility shed, changing clothes. He had a knife. Lex didn't wait. He lunged, pinning Callahan's arm down until officers secured him. No struggle, no last words. Just a dog doing what no one else could. The man who'd hidden in plain sight, who had nearly escaped again, was finally in custody. Because Lex hadn't barked to protect his pride. He had barked to protect a school full of children, who had no idea what kind of danger had been walking among them. And Emily. She stood by the gym doors, hand pressed to her chest, heart pounding. Lex had been right all along. The arrest of Coach Peter Callahan, rattled Maple Ridge Middle School to its core. Though the announcement from the administration was vague, cloaked in phrases like personnel changes and safety protocols, the truth traveled, faster than any email blast ever could. Students pieced it together, parents whispered at pickup, and the staff walked the halls like people waking from a bad dream they didn't know they were having. But it wasn't over. Not for Emily. Not for Lex, and definitely not for Megan Carlin. Megan spent the next 48 hours in a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and quiet fury. She'd known somewhere in her gut, just like Lex had, that something about Brent felt off. But knowing wasn't the same as proving. And while Callahan was now behind bars, Megan knew predators like him didn't act alone. They relied on silence, on complicit systems, on bureaucracies that preferred avoiding scandals over confronting monsters. That Tuesday, Megan sat in the district's joint law enforcement briefing. Agent Rowan from the FBI's Child Exploitation Task Force pulled up a screen displaying Callahan's fake credentials. Forged teaching certificate from Oregon, falsified ID issued out of a private P.O. box in New Mexico. How long was he under our radar? Someone asked. Over 4 years, Rowan replied. Moved through at least 5 school districts, always as a sub, always short-term, never enough to draw attention. Until now. Until Lex.Megan clenched her jaw. What about his connections? Any ties to other suspects or trafficking rings? Rowan clicked through a slide of evidence photos. One showed the binder Emily had seen, now confirmed to contain photos, personal data of students, handwritten notes about schedules and routines. It made Megan sick. Most of the names are redacted, Rowan said, but a few aliases overlap with prior investigations. We're digging deeper. Megan's mind kept going back to Emily. The way she had seen what no one else did. The way she hadn't second-guessed Lex's instincts. In a different timeline, in a slightly different hour, Callahan might have disappeared again. Or worse. When the briefing ended, Megan drove straight to the school. Lex was waiting by the door. Emily was already there, sitting under the sycamore tree with her backpack still on. When she saw Megan, she stood quickly. "Is it true?" she asked. "Was he really that guy?" Megan nodded slowly. "Peter Callahan, confirmed through fingerprint and DNA." Emily swallowed. "He seemed so normal." "That's how they do it," Megan said gently. "They blend, they perform, they charm, and they hope no one listens to the part of them that doesn't fit." Emily looked down at Lex, who nuzzled her knee. He listened. Megan smiled. He always does. That night, the 3 of them met quietly at the precinct, not officially, just privately. The captain let them use a side conference room while Megan reviewed the case file with Emily. She showed her the map of Callahan's movements, the fake resumes, the documented suspicions that had never been pursued. "This system failed," Megan said flatly. "Too many times." Emily's hands trembled slightly. "Is he going to stay in jail? With the charges stacking up?" "Yes. But there's more. We think he was being protected. Or at least allowed to slip through cracks too big to be accidental. Emily blinked. Protected by who? Megan paused. We don't know. Not yet. The next morning, Megan received an encrypted email from the FBI. They'd traced a series of payments made to an unlisted account connected to Callahan. The money came from a non-profit organization registered as Safe Future Foundation. On paper, the charity funded at-risk youth programs. But behind the scenes, it was a shell. No real offices, no staff. And the listed director, someone named Howard Brent. The fake name Callahan had used to apply to Maple Ridge. Megan's stomach turned. They were dealing with an entire network. She shared the findings with the district attorney and the lead agent. A task force was formed. Quietly, carefully. They didn't want to spook others who might be involved. That same afternoon, Emily returned to school. There was a subtle shift in the air. Students kept their voices lower. Teachers stood nearer, to doors. But Emily felt something else too, a strange strength. People looked at her differently now. They knew she had been part of what brought Callahan down. Some whispered thank yous. Others just nodded. But the most important recognition came from the younger students, especially those who used to flinch at loud voices or avoid eye contact with male teachers. They started sitting closer to Emily at lunch. Lex walked the halls, again badge polished, posture proud. The administration gave him a new title, Honorary Student Guardian. A silly name, maybe, but the students loved it. He got high fives, scratches behind the ear. Treats slipped under desks, but even with the praise, Lex stayed sharp, watching, waiting, protecting, because something told Megan they hadn't seen the end of this. And Lex knew better than anyone. The surface only ever tells part of the story. The rest hides beneath the name. The news broke quietly at first, an internal memo from the district, a whisper between departments, a hint dropped in the teacher's lounge. But by the end of the week, one thing was clear. Maple Ridge wasn't the only school affected. Similar reports started to emerge, one in Montana, another in Arizona, all linked by a common thread, a man who used different names, forged credentials, and just enough charisma to slip past every gatekeeper. And now, with Peter Callahan in custody, the real questions started surfacing. Who helped him? Who else was involved? And most haunting of all, how close had they come to missing it again? At the center of this unraveling network stood three unlikely figures. A middle school girl, a K-9 with a silver badge, and a police officer who no longer trusted the system's silence. Emily Tran walked the halls differently now, not with arrogance, but with awareness. She noticed the way younger students lingered by her locker, the way teachers glanced her way with newfound respect. But it wasn't the kind of attention she enjoyed, because behind every nod, every hushed, "That's her," was the weight of a truth that still made her stomach twist. She had almost stayed silent. Lex, meanwhile, returned to his daily patrols. But Megan Carlin kept a closer eye on him than ever. She knew his instincts were sharp, but now she also knew the stakes. One Friday morning, as Lex paused by the side entrance to the cafeteria, his body went still. Not rigid like before, not alert, but aware. Megan followed his gaze and spotted a man unloading a shipment of vending machine snacks. Normal, except the man wasn't the regular delivery guy. Lex stepped forward. The man froze, then offered a nervous laugh. "Hey, buddy." "Just doing a drop," Megan approached. "ID?" He fumbled for it, too slow. Megan radioed the front office. The man bolted. Lex lunged. They caught him 2 blocks away. Fake ID, no work order. When questioned, he claimed it was a misunderstanding. But the van he left behind contained more than chips and soda. In the back, hidden beneath crates, they found surveillance equipment. High-end, illegal. The message was clear. Someone was watching. Megan requested a temporary lockdown while police swept the building. No threats found. But the tension remained. Kids whispered. Parents panicked, and the administration began looking for someone to blame. People are scared, Principal Hargrove admitted to Megan over coffee the next day. They want to believe it was just one man, one bad actor. But it wasn't, Megan said bluntly, and pretending otherwise won't protect anyone. Emily watched the shift unfold. Security increased. Staff meetings ran longer. But the real change happened in whispers. Girls began approaching her after class. Something felt weird when he talked to me. I thought I was imagining it. He always asked personal questions like where my locker was when I got picked up. Each story was different, but the pattern was unmistakable. And in every story, Lex had been nearby, sitting, watching, listening. Sometimes a bark isn't just a sound, it's a message. Megan began assembling a report, not just for the department, but for the school board, the press, and anyone who still believed silence was safety. Emily helped, her notes meticulous, her observations sharp. But what neither of them saw coming was what happened next. Late one afternoon, a letter arrived at the police department. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. No note, no explanation, just footage. Hidden camera footage of Peter Callahan in the staff lounge, in locker rooms, in classrooms after hours, watching, listening, collecting. He hadn't been acting, alone. He'd been feeding footage somewhere, to someone. Megan's breath caught as she scrubbed through the files. Dozens of hours of recordings, student faces, teacher conversations. Lex growled low as the images flicked past. Emily, when shown, a still went pale. "That was my locker," she whispered. "He filmed me?" "Yes," Megan said, voice tight. "But not just you. Everyone." The department launched a federal investigation. The flash drive was sent to digital forensics. And Lex? He started. Pacing again. More restless now, sleeping less, barking more. That week, Megan got a call from an agent in Washington. There's chatter on the dark web. A ring operating under the name Chimera. They traffic more than people. They trade footage, behavior, psychology, patterns. Some schools were test grounds. Maple Ridge was one of them. Suddenly, Megan's report wasn't about a local predator. It was about a national network, and Lex had sniffed it first. Emily wrote a piece for the school paper. The headline was simple: "Trust the bark." It didn't detail the crimes. It didn't expose names. It told a story about a dog who knew before anyone else did, about listening, about speaking, and about how silence, too, is a choice. The piece went viral, picked up by local news, shared by parent groups, cited in district meetings, and one day, unexpectedly, Emily got a letter. Handwritten. From a girl in Nebraska. "I read your story. It made me speak up. My school is looking into a teacher now." "Thank you." Emily held the letter with shaking hands. Lex sat beside her, leaning into her side. He didn't need to say anything. He already had. It started as a ceremony, ended as a reckoning. The school planned it as a quiet thank you. A final farewell to Lex before his reassignment. But once word got out, about what he'd uncovered, about what he'd prevented, it grew. Parents asked to attend. News vans showed up. A senator sent a representative. The gym was packed. Emily stood near the bleachers, hands clenched, heart loud. Lex sat calmly beside Officer Megan Carlin in the front row, his silver badge polished, his eyes scanning. Principal Hargrove stepped up to the mic. "Today we honor a guardian," he began, "not just for what he stopped, but for what he taught us. About trust, about instinct, about listening to what can't always be said." A standing ovation followed. Megan took the stage next. Lex didn't do this for medals or for treats. He did it because something in him couldn't ignore what was wrong, even when the rest of us were willing to. She paused, glancing at Lex, then at the students. "It's not just about dogs. It's about learning to trust your gut, to speak up, to protect each other." Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, a second badge. Larger, engraved. Lex, on behalf of the Maple Ridge community, we present this to you. For courage, service, and integrity beyond expectation. Lex didn't bark. He didn't bow. He just looked out at the crowd, eyes steady, present, quiet. And then the final surprise, Emily stepped forward. She hadn't told anyone, not even Megan, but she held a piece of paper in her shaking hands. And when the room fell silent, she read, "I used to think heroes were loud, that they had capes or catchphrases, that everyone saw them coming. But Lex wasn't loud. He barked only when it mattered. He didn't look for attention, he looked for the truth. And he found it." Her voice wavered. "He saved me. Not because something happened, but because something almost did. And that's enough." The gym was silent. Then, thunderous applause. That night, something shifted. Emily's story, Lex's story, spread across news outlets, podcasts, and social feeds. People called it a miracle, a warning, a wake-up call. But behind the headlines, something darker emerged. Another girl came forward, then another, from different towns, different schools, all describing the same man, the same pattern, Peter Callahan's. Name made national headlines. The FBI opened a task force. A map lit up, dots where he'd been, aliases he'd used, jobs he'd worked. Megan Carlin received a commendation. Lex was nominated for a National Canine Valor Award. And Emily? She was asked to speak. First at a district event, then a state education conference, then a national symposium on student safety. But she hesitated, because her hand still shook when she remembered. Not the near miss, but the near silence. The moment. She almost brushed it all away. One afternoon, sitting under the sycamore tree behind the school, Megan joined her. "You don't have to keep telling the story," she said. "You're not responsible for carrying it alone." Emily nodded slowly. "I know, but I think someone has to." She looked down at Lex. He barked. I listened, and now, maybe someone else will. The next day, Emily received an envelope. Inside, a court summons. She'd be testifying in Callahan's trial. She wasn't the victim. Not directly, but her observation, the hallway camera, the sleeve, the bite, had been the spark. Megan sat with her as they went over testimony. "You'll be nervous," she said. "That's okay, just speak your truth." Emily nodded. "I'm not afraid of him. I'm afraid of forgetting." The courtroom was sterile, cold, but Lex sat in the back row beside Megan, calm as ever. Emily took the stand. She told the truth. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't minimize it. She told it exactly how it happened. And when she looked over and saw Lex, ears forward, eyes fixed on her, she didn't shake. Callahan never met her gaze. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts. The courtroom didn't erupt, just breathed. A long-held exhale from a community that had waited too long. Emily stepped outside into the sunlight. Lex padded up beside her. She knelt, buried her face in his fur. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it." That fall, Emily was awarded a Youth Courage Medal. Lex's story became a national training case for K-9 units. Megan was promoted to regional coordinator for school safety initiatives. And the sanctuary that had offered Lex his next post changed plans. "We'd like to keep him here," they told Megan. With Emily, Megan asked her directly. Emily stared in shock. "You mean he'd be mine? Yours to live with, to learn from, to love, if you're ready." Emily didn't answer at first. She looked at Lex, and Lex, as always, looked back, quiet, steady, waiting. Then she smiled. "I've been ready since he barked." They say time softens the sharpest moments, that memory fades with distance, but some echoes don't diminish. They grow stronger in the stillness that follows. Lex's bark was one of those echoes. Months passed since the trial. Life resumed its quiet rhythm. Maple Ridge Middle School continued on, Students coming and going, teachers reshuffling, routines reforming. But something had shifted. A vigilance had taken root. In policies, in posture, and most importantly, in people. Emily Tran, now a freshman in high school, walked those new halls with a different gait. Not louder, not faster, just firmer. She had learned something many never do. That instincts matter. That silence isn't always safety. And that sometimes the smallest sound, a bark, a whisper, a hesitation, is the very thing that saves a life. Lex lived with her now, not just as a dog, but as a partner. A companion, a symbol. At home he was relaxed, goofy even, curling at her feet while she studied or resting his head on the windowsill. But when she clipped his badge back on for school visits or community events, he became what he had always been, a quiet sentinel. They visited elementary schools, libraries, even police departments. Emily would speak, Lex would listen, and somewhere, in between, people would hear what they needed to. That courage didn't always shout, that heroes didn't always arrive in sirens, that sometimes a warning came not from fear, but from love. One day, at a rural school assembly, a third grader approached her afterward, small, nervous, clutching a drawing of a dog with a heart-shaped badge. "He barks when I get scared," the child whispered, "even in my dreams." Emily knelt down, looked the child in the eyes. "Then he's still doing his job," she said. That night, back home, she sat on the porch with Lex. The wind was soft, the stars sharp. She scratched behind his ears and whispered, "You knew. Before I did, before anyone did." Lex blinked, yawned, leaned into her touch. "You saved more than a school," she continued. "You saved belief. You made it okay to feel things, to notice things, to speak." Lex didn't answer. He never did. But in the quiet, his presence was everything. Sometimes the echo of a bark doesn't fade. It becomes a call. For safety, for truth, for trust, and for Emily Tran, that echo was still ringing. Because while Lex had moved on from Maple Ridge, his legacy hadn't. Every hesitant hand raised in class, every hallway conversation that turned serious, every poster reminding students, "If it feels wrong, say something." That was him, that was the echo. And in time, maybe every school will have a Lex. Maybe every student will trust their voice as much as he trusted his instincts. And maybe, just maybe, the next warning won't need to be a bite, just a whisper, just a look, just enough. Because sometimes all it takes you is one bark to change everything.